Life can be messy,
Life can be unpredictable,
but a whole lot of love.
and a little wine makes it all work.
This is Love and Jesus Juice. Hey, Paula,
Hey, Kirby,
what are we drinking?
we are drinking the Italian from First Miracle Winery, our sponsor,
Our sponsor.
and we love them.
We love them, and this is our second red, and that Italian.
The Italian. So, I don't remember this one. Shocker. This winery is in Fredericksburg, Indiana. So but really, truly, people, go check this winery out. Check these people out. They're so fun. They know their wine. They are really trying to run a great business. I just love them.
Totally forgiving them that their bottles say Urban Winery when it's in the middle of nowhere.
It's the middle of nowhere.
But,
yeah.
that's okay.
Yes.
That's okay. I think they moved.
They did?
I don't know. They have to.
Oh, I see. I thought you meant they moved since we were there.
No. Now that's Italian.
Sangiovese. I bet that has Sangiovese.
I think so. I'm sure it probably does.
Has to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good, which is my favorite. If you love a dry red with just a hint of sweet on the very, very end of it, Sangiovese sometimes can leave just a little tiny bit sweet.
So we're thanking them. This is their 4th episode sponsoring us, and we're so glad because with their sponsorship, we are growing our listenership.
Yay!
We are over 2,500 downloads.
I am really excited, and that means that you guys have been doing what we're asking you to, which is share it.
Mm-hmm.
And we are grateful for that because we can only do so much. That's one of the things that I have found with my other business. I can go out and beat the pavement and make it happen. And this is different.
It is. It's very different. It's very different. It's kind of weird because all we can do is just put some content out there and share it to the people we know. But
Right.
it requires them sharing it, and it requires people who happen to stumble upon us or find a business card or whatever, sharing it. And that's how podcasting works. It's a very organic growth mechanism. And I think it's exciting.
I was going to say, it's actually pretty cool because if you think about, so many of us are so tired of being fed information that we maybe don't really want in the way that we're getting it, and yet we feel like we need to take it in.
Mm-hmm.
And podcasting is really, like you said, organic. Go find what you want to know more about or what you think you might want to know more about. So one of the things that I've been doing, I don't even think I told you this, is I've been trying to listen to a new podcast. So I walk 3 or 4 times, sometimes 5 times a week, just to kind of depending. And it is a leisurely, just to go listen to a podcast. I'm not in a hurry. I don't time it. I don't even see the distance.
It's just a break in your day. Instead of breaking at the water cooler or in front of a television, you break with a walk.
I go walk. And it's really good for just my spirit. And I'm not a desk person, but I try to work at my desk because I get more done. And so anyway, I've been trying to listen to something once a week that is just totally kind of random, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one that's been mentioned in a different podcast, but trying to branch out.
Right.
Just to get other concepts, ideas, words, whatever. And so I would encourage you, please listen to us, but then go listen to another podcast that maybe is a little outside your genre that you may not like, but listen to one of them.
And on top of that, this is a very exciting time.
Yeah.
We didn't make this announcement for the last 2 episodes because they were very heavy episodes.
Okay.
Part 1 and Part 2 of our conversation on race. But those episodes launched our 2nd year in existence.
So crazy. And we are getting braver or stupider. I don't know
We'll
what
see.
it is, but we've been talking about kind of attacking some, or attacking, that's probably not the right word, going after meeting some maybe a little bit more deep.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't want to call them controversial, although people make them that.
They may be perceived that way, but that's not the purpose of them.
Right.
It's really just for us to use this platform that we have to get some conversation going. To us, it's not about putting an opinion out there. It really isn't in those podcasts. It's really about having the conversation.
And tomorrow marks my favorite day of the year.
What's that?
It is the anniversary of the day that I fooled you into marrying me.
Oh, that is
And
tomorrow.
it is proof that, for another year, I still have you brainwashed.
You do.
And
I'm
you
here.
have not gone anywhere. And that's
Yep.
always exciting to me that I've made it another year without you figuring out you could do better.
No, I could do that. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'm just kidding. No, I really, in 27 years years ago tomorrow. Doesn't that seem crazy? And yet I can't imagine my life any different.
Right. And you can't blame my parents anymore. Because you've had me longer than they
That
did.
was the big joke with his dad. His dad would say something about his birthday, and I would still say, he's still your fault.
Yep.
He's still your fault until he wasn't.
Yes. It's kind of funny. I do think we kind of started this podcast as an anniversary present to ourselves last year.
Maybe we did.
I don't. It just happened.
That's just how it happens.
So every year when we change seasons, then we're going to be changing with our anniversary year. So it's kind of fun.
I love
Kind of
that. I love that. And tomorrow we are going for our actual anniversary. We are going floating.
We're going floating.
With some
Well,
friends.
we're taking inner tubes to the same creek we were in before, but we haven't had a lot of rain, so it
maybe
may be
walking.
walking and sitting in a tube.
But we did get some friends to do it with us.
Yes,
so that
it'll be
we're
fun. There'll be a picnic. There'll be some conversation.
It'll be fun.
It'll be fun. Okay, so let's get on to what we're going to talk about tonight.
Okay.
I'm sure they've paused already and they've subscribed to the podcast and they've shared it on Facebook. They've done all that stuff. So now they just
So
need
now
us
we
to-
can
now
go
it's-
to the next phase. Okay.
So after a couple of weeks of a pretty heavy conversation, though, we did
Yeah.
talk about, we wanted a little more lighthearted one.
Yeah.
And a conversation came up in our family recently about what is the appropriate amount of chores for children to do.
And this has been really interesting because I asked some friends, I had lunch with some friends yesterday, day before, whenever it was, and I said, tell me about what you did with your kids or are doing with your kids
Right.
in one case, and then what you did growing up. So I didn't tell you I had this
No, you did
conversation,
not.
but it
This
was
is new
so
information.
interesting because we obviously have opinions based on how we did it,
Mhm.
whether that was right or wrong, but we have opinions and how we were raised,
Right.
which we were raised very similarly in that way.
In that way, yes. I mean, our
Yeah.
parents' value system on child labor was very similar.
Yeah, it was very similar. And then our take on child labor was pretty similar. And so I asked these friends, and it was so interesting. So one has all kids that are 18 or older.
Right.
Okay. And so she said, I didn't have them do anything. I regret it immensely. I'm paying for it now as they're adults. So really, truly feeling like I should have done it differently. The other one has a 9-year-old and she doesn't have to do much.
Really?
Clean up her room and stuff like that occasionally, but yeah, doesn't do much at all. And so then I asked them, okay, so growing up, what did you have to do?
Yeah.
Because I thought that would be interesting because maybe that's where it came from. Now, my one friend who says I should have had them do more, she was raised by a single mom and she had to be the adult in a
Right.
lot of ways.
Yeah, the
And
single
so-
mom had some issues beyond just being a single mom.
Right, exactly. And so she took on a lot as a young child that no young child should have to take on. And so she went that direction because she so didn't want her kids to have to deal with that. She says that she went
yo-yo response.
Yes, exactly. And she says she went too far. So that's her, like that was not a good choice for her. Then my friend who does not have her she has an only child. Well, yeah, only child that's in the home. And she was an only child as well,
Right.
who didn't have to do much.
So she's parenting the way she was parented.
Yeah. And so I just thought, because I thought maybe it was, did you yo-yo? Or
Right.
did you, and so I don't think there's any rhyme or reason to that part either. Because we
No.
definitely did what our parents did. But again, that doesn't necessarily tell the story either.
Yeah, I think for every example, you have one that modeled, you have
Yeah.
one that yo-yoed.
Yeah,
I heard
exactly.
somebody say one time that you parent the way your grandparents parented your parents, and I absolutely have seen that example.
Yeah, for sure.
But I do think we tended to parent closer to how our parents parented
Probably.
than our grandparents necessarily did. But I also think our parents parented.
Similarly.
I just use parented a lot,
You did. It was almost a tongue twister.
except for the same word. I could win all tongue twisters if I'm only saying the
Only
same
saying
word,
that word?
over any word over and over again. That's
Yeah.
a different kind.
Anyway, that was interesting.
Yeah.
But so I just thought it was really interesting to ask them those questions and get their input.
So why, beyond those reasons, why do you think people don't have their children do stuff?
Well, I think part of it is the perfectionist. It needs to be done a certain way. And so it's just easier to do it themselves because having your kids do stuff, especially when they're really young,
Right.
it is more work.
Yeah, you have to supervise them. The younger they are.
Not only is it not getting done the way you, quote, want it to get done, but now you're standing over them, maybe fighting with them about it.
Right. Which is the goal, not to do that, but yeah.
But initially, that
Well, and if anybody
often
says they
right.
can get their kids to 18 and never fight over a chore,
Oh, Lord have mercy, please.
I
Like,
don't-
we definitely want your notes, however you do
Yeah,
that.
I don't know that that's possible.
Right.
Unless the kid's just got some wiring that makes them very placid
Right.
and okay,
Right.
I'll do what you tell me to do.
Yeah, exactly. And so I don't know. I mean, in the two examples of our friends and us, I think it could have been any of those things, but I do know that that's one reason why I've heard as I've continued to work with women why they don't have their kids do
Right.
this.
And I think I've also heard that they want their kids to be kids.
Right. That is a common one too. I don't want to give them too much responsibility. Let them be kids. They should be able to play. They should be able to do whatever they want and just have total freedom.
So it was interesting as I did some research on this. I found several sites that you can find where you kind of parenting for dummies, a list of things that they can do
Yeah.
and the age range that they can
Me
do.
too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Me too.
And I thought, oh wow, obviously this is a topic that people
Very
Google
much.
a lot because
Right.
there's lots of information on it.
Lots of articles on
Yeah,
this.
but universally, it was psychologists, people where kids should be doing something.
Yes, but it was qualified in that kids should not need to be adults, like my one friend is.
Mhm.
That having all the responsibility, not that there aren't situations that happens, and that's not a judgment on that, but just as a blanket statement, having kids do all the adult things is not the goal.
So we could go over some of these lists, and we will in a minute. But before we do that, let's talk about our experience a little bit. Because I don't know that we even really had a lot of conversation about it,
No.
which was odd. I would say
Probably.
in most relationships, that's kind of an early conversation that should be
That
had.
would be interesting. We're gonna go have pizza with some people in a couple of weeks that I don't know super well. That would be a really interesting conversation
Right.
to ask them about.
Yeah, we were very lucky. Some of the harder conversations we just came to, we didn't have the conversation. We were at the same
Luckily.
page.
Yeah.
But early on, when you're talking about how to parent your kids, if one parent thinks they shouldn't do anything and the other parent thinks they should do their share, that's a point of contention that probably should be solved before the kids get
Well,
there.
and that same conversation we've talked about in marriage counseling is what are your expectations of the man, the woman, the spouse, the person, like, are there expectations about what somebody is going to do in a marriage and what they're not going to do in a marriage? And you're probably bringing that in from growing up, no matter what that is one person supposed to take out the trash and another person
Right.
is supposed to cook. And a lot of times that comes from the way that you were raised. And I think in the same way, we a lot of times do come in with expectations about what kids will or won't do based on how we were raised, opposite or the same.
And some relationships are just kind of can see that because they get to know the families and whatnot. And I think that's probably the best way to go about it is you're intimate enough that you just
naturally
know.
happens.
But a lot of times it doesn't happen that way. I know I came at it from the perspective of simple filter. Could they physically do it or could they physically learn how to do it? And that was all I needed to make it an expectation of them.
Right.
So if they could clean their room, then they were old enough to clean their room.
Well, when I started my business, I know one of my trainings, which was from your mom, and so this would make total sense. Anything you do for someone that they can do for themselves makes them weak.
Right.
When you're trying to raise them up. Now, that's not true if you have a friend who is in need. They need support, they need encouragement. You have to tweak that a little bit. But that concept of
Yeah, all things being equal and all people being healthy.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the teach them a fish, give them a fish, or teach them to fish concept. And so with from my parenting perspective going in was, as the kids got older, every year there would be another responsibility that they would take on. And the more responsibilities that they could take on, the stronger that they would become and the closer they would be getting to an adult.
Well, and I think one of the things that I did, because I did stay home with them when they were little, I did have more time. So
Mhm.
that does definitely play into it. And so I could take the time to instruct them a little bit more because I didn't have another job. I'm not saying that people that do have other jobs can't do that, but I
Right.
did have that flexibility. In addition, I had the patience to be very aware that they like to help. And
Yes.
I really did have the ability to, it didn't bother me if it didn't get done exactly. I'm not an exact science kind of person. So that
Well,
helps
you
too.
sold them on, you want to help me cook.
Yeah.
It was all in your tone of voice. It was the experience. So they were there from the littlest toddler.
Oh my,
thing.
well, they were, little when they were sitting on the counter.
And
cooking
again,
with me.
qualifier, you love to cook. So that's
Absolutely.
why this wasn't a gender thing. This was,
That was what I enjoyed.
yeah. I mean, they stood next to the grill with me when I would grill sometimes.
Absolutely.
Right on the lawnmower when I was on those rare occasions that I was someplace with a riding lawnmower, we had a push mower. But I taught them how to push the lawnmower. Those types of things.
It wasn't a gender thing. It was if they wanted to learn, or if we were doing something and they showed any inclination, or they were standing there, we would try to engage them. So no, I think cooking just happened to be something I loved.
And let's go back a little bit to how you were raised with your levels of expectation. At what point, at what age do you think you were started to give what would be considered adult responsibilities?
You know what? I was really thinking about this, of course, because of this conversation, and I honestly don't remember. I always remember doing stuff around the house. I don't ever remember feeling like I had to do all the things by any form of the imagination, but dusting was my job. And I'm sure I helped clean toilets and stuff like that probably too. But I hated to dust, so that's probably why I remember that so much. And I remember we cleaned house, and that was my job. I'm sure my brother I don't remember what my brother had to do because I just hated, dusting. So I probably thought my mom was the worst person on earth because she made me dust, but because I hated to do it. But I remember us doing that. I remember that we would go grocery shopping, and I would help organize things. Like I would help put things away. That was a part of.
Well, grocery shopping was a family affair.
Yeah, and I don't remember. I mean, I remember going to the grocery store some, but I also know that my mom would bring home the groceries sometimes because of where we lived and how that worked, and I would help put them away. It wasn't like my mom brought them in and put them all away all the time, and we just sat there and watched her. That would have never been acceptable. We also raised animals when I was younger, and so taking care of animals and feeding them and cleaning pens and stuff was absolutely part of what we did. And things were heavy. I mean, carrying water, but those water buckets, I still remember those. It's so funny, the things you remember. Those 5-gallon water buckets had the little plastic thing on the metal. You know what I'm talking about? And that plastic would dig into my hands. I can feel.
Well, it's better that digs in the metal itself, because I had a few with the broken plastic
things.
things.
And that hurts worse, for sure. But I don't ever remember feeling like I had to do all the things there. I helped fold laundry if it was there. I had to put my own laundry away for sure. I didn't always do laundry, but I always had to put my own away. I don't remember my mom putting my laundry away. So yeah, those kind of things that I guess maybe would be considered adult, but that was just.
Well, I remember climbing up and onto the top of the counter and being on my knees so I could put plates away, because I was a small little child.
Yeah.
And so I would get handed a plate and it would go in there. I remember my dad teaching me how to drag a chair over to the stove and how to operate the stove and stove safety, because it was a gas stove. And I would warm up my own SpaghettiOs, because that was before microwave. Yeah. And then I became a real cook when I had a microwave.
You could really go
and we were pretty much responsible for our own food at that point.
Yeah.
Because my mom would make casseroles.
Sure.
And so, because she worked, and her work took her, like yours does oftentimes, in the evening. And traveling and whatnot. So her solution was to, especially during the winters, because my dad was a great grill person too. Right. And he was at home there and he could grill. But my mom was, the good old traditional carb-based meal would come in a casserole dish.
And she would make those like on Sundays,
right? Make those on Sundays, yeah.
And then you guys would eat off of them for a week, or eat those things for a week, and so you were responsible to warm them up.
And 2 or 3, because I wasn't interested in cooking, it'd be 2 or 3 hours of her making up the casseroles. But then she'd make chocolate chip cookies, because I was interested in helping with that. Because the person who helped with the chocolate chip cookies got to lick the chocolate chip cookie bowl.
Got it. Okay, so that was important.
That was important to me. But these are the types of things that I realized that I did, even though I wasn't necessarily big enough to do it. Now, I was the baby of the family. I was the third child, so there was an increase of expectation level there because they'd already kind of gone through it.
Right.
And we did that with our 2 children. It seemed like our second child grew up faster.
Definitely.
Because you're having more adult conversations with the older one, and you forget the younger one's there.
Well, and if our girls were 21 months apart, so
yeah, it was really hard to remember they weren't the same age.
That was really different to our youngest and probably our oldest disadvantage at times. Right. Yeah.
But we also, it was a different time. It was 1970s and early 80s. If I had a bicycle, I had independence. I had boundaries, but those boundaries were much bigger than what a lot of kids have right now.
Well, just realistically. And I grew up in the country, and so it wasn't that I necessarily, you just didn't go out on the country roads like that. I mean, you just didn't do that.
And then the other thing that I think that was different between the two of us is, for most of the jobs in my house, there was financial rewards attached to it.
Right. And we never got allowance for it. And
Right.
I mean, that was, now my parents, if I wanted something, I would ask for it and they would either pay, but I also didn't ask for much. I was just not one of those kids that asked for much.
And I really don't think there's a right or wrong answer to
Totally.
that. You know, whether it's the fixed allowance, whether it's you have to ask, but you'll probably get the money 90% of the time.
Right.
But I'm not, as long as I'm not spoiling you, then always yes. And that I knew that for every load of clothes that were dumped next to me while I was watching TV, I could make 50 cents
Right.
by folding them.
So you were ready to go.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that was interesting about when I was looking at these articles. Do you have allowance for the kids doing them? And they said for younger kids, no. In several of them, younger kids, no. Older kids, yes. And so I thought that was
I would flip
interesting.
that, honestly.
Yeah. So for older kids who already know how to be responsible, money can become a nice motivator for doing extra chores above and beyond their usual tasks. So
That's
there
the key.
was,
I do think
so there was definitely a because you live here, and that's how I always took. You live here, so there are things that you do because you are a member of this home.
And that was the hybrid that we built in.
Yeah.
Putting dishes away after dinner was not a paid for chore. That was because you live here.
Well, and one of the things that we started, and I don't remember having a conversation about it, but you didn't just get up and walk away from the table and
Right.
leave your stuff there. And you didn't not help clean up. There was always, and it wasn't, I don't remember it being an assigned task or anything. We just helped clean up.
No, there would be a few times where somebody might get up because they had to go to the bathroom or whatever, and we'd go, whoa, where are you going?
Yeah.
Because, we're all going to do this. And we did alternate who did the dishes. We had if you cooked, you didn't have to do the dishes type. Well, since you did most of the cooking, the kids and I, that was what we told them was you didn't cook. So I remember, and then they started saying, well, I want to cook because they didn't want to do the dishes.
Right. Which was totally good.
Which was fine. But yeah, we kind of had that. There's a community role here. The house has to be neatish, but vacuuming is above and beyond. So that would be in the allowance-based list. And that's what I do remember growing up too. How we got rewarded changed as we got older.
Which is appropriate.
Because there was a point in time where I never got a fixed allowance. I got 50 cents for folding clothes when I was 4 years old because I could fold clothes. With my mom's business, I could do some things that got paid piecemeal.
Sure.
I had piece money. But then I remember a conversation around the kitchen table with my parents because our friends were getting an allowance. And my dad said, okay, if you guys want to go the allowance route, we'll go the allowance route. We're going to divide the house up. And we had a 4-floor house.
Right.
We're going to divide the house up and we're going to give you each fixed duties. And those duties are done on Sunday.
Right.
And if you don't do them, you don't get the allowance. So we went the old traditional chore. So I had every bit of cleaning that was responsible on the main floor. Vacuuming, dusting, sorting, putting away the whole 9 yards. And my brother had it on the floor, my sister had it on the floor. They had some, like one of them had toilets.
Right.
But I was younger, so I didn't have to do toilets. But that was one of those where for a season, that was what worked in our family.
Right.
And then as they got older and it became harder maybe for them to do things on Sunday, or I could do more, or I wanted more money, because they got to a point where they would pay me to do their floor.
Right, because they didn't want to do it.
Yeah, and I wanted to make money. And my dad's like, okay, we're going to go a different way. Then we actually kept a timesheet.
Yeah.
I remember being 11 and having a time card. And so every time I was asked to do anything, except for some of the stuff that I'd always gotten paid for. I'm thinking about piece stuff. When I was 4, I was ironing my dad's hankies. My dad liked a pressed hanky.
Yeah.
And so they would lower the ironing board down as low as it could. I was taught iron safety.
Yeah.
But I would get 10 cents a hanky.
I love it.
To iron it. See, to me, that's the way you look at it with your kids. Okay, how can you reward them, teach them the value of money, and the value of hard work?
Yeah, and it was so interesting in this particular article. It actually said chores are partly about responsibility and partly about learning household tasks, which I agree with. They're not focused on earning money. Yes, kids need to learn how to handle money, but not by doing chores they're supposed to do anyway. So that was their qualifier. And I think, again, you have to go with,
I think there's some value to that.
Right. But articles like this are written potentially by a psychologist from that perspective. And I think all of them, you take the thought process and you go, okay, how would I feel like implementing that in my home? And then you go from there.
Right. And I think it's true because I do think there's some things that you're never going to get rewarded for. Keeping a neat home when you're an adult, you don't get paid for.
Right.
But if you work as a housekeeper, if you like to clean house, you can make money doing that for other people. So connecting the ability to make money doing that is a good thing. Understanding that, hey, inside these walls, that's yours, which is what we talked about somebody earlier today with our daughter. We had one daughter who was neat, one daughter who was a slob. And the slob daughter was told, hey, here, 2 things are going to happen with your bedroom. Well, 3 things. 1, nothing can grow.
Yes, right.
2, it can't come outside the door.
And she would get it to the door.
Oh, she would. And 3, if you want woke up, there better be a path to your bed.
And the laundry was another biggie.
Yeah, we're not going into your bedroom to get your laundry.
And so they couldn't bring it all in a huge pile down at one time. If they wanted to bring
and say
it
they
down,
needed it tomorrow.
Right. If they wanted to bring it down even a couple of days at a time, they didn't need to bring it down every day, then I would do it. And then there were times where I said, I do laundry on this day. If you want to make sure your laundry's down here, I'll do it. And both of them, one of them just because she just preferred to do it herself.
Right.
Our oldest, and then our youngest just never brought it down until she needed it. And so then she'd have to do it all. So either way, we gave him the option. Like, Mom will do it and you guys will help me.
And we were really blessed because we moved when they were 8 and 6.
Yeah.
And so that became an opportunity when we moved houses to set up rules at a different age. So they both knew they weren't little kids anymore. So when we moved into the house, we could make those stipulations. You guys have your bedroom upstairs. We have ours downstairs. We don't need to climb the stairs. We went through the whole rationale. We don't come upstairs. So that's when we need the house cleaned, that's your area because you're the one that's going to mess it up. And so that helped. So I would recommend to people going, okay, where are these benchmarks? And go, maybe it's a January 1st.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a birthday year and go, okay, now that we're at this point, we're going to evaluate the responsibilities in the house and we're going to move things from you live here so you don't get paid and you're going to do it. And these are the things I'm willing to pay you for above and beyond. These are the things I'm going to pay you for, but they still have to be done and they're still your responsibility. I think there's that category too.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get on your case if they're not done, but I will also make them part of your allowance.
Right. And I think that's where it gets a little bit tough, especially if you've got a kid who just doesn't care. They don't care if they get in trouble. They don't care if they make money. They don't care about anything. And that's where it gets a little challenging. And it has to be a non-negotiable, this is not questionable. Like, we will take everything out of your room and you will sleep on the floor.
Yeah.
If that's what it takes.
Yeah. Also, I see the things on Facebook about the dad who sold all the toys and people are, no, I think that's absolutely fine if that's what it takes to get their attention.
If living in your home, there are responsibilities for them, then you have to be willing to, I've always said, if you're going to make a rule, then you need to stick to it. Or choose that it's not an important rule. I didn't care if Corey's room was immaculate all the time, because I was not going to go up to her room every day and say it has to be clean.
Yeah.
So we made that choice.
Not to fight.
I'm not willing to do this on a daily basis. It's not important. So if you're going to make a rule that beds have to be made, laundry has to be put away, whatever the case is, then you have to be willing to go to the mat to make sure that it happens or not.
So I'm reading this article from Psychology Today, Robert Myers, PhD, and it talks about primary schoolers. This is going to make some people feel better, I think.
Okay.
Once a child reaches primary school age, that would be early elementary, they can take on a lot more responsibility without supervision. Parents should understand that this age group will sometimes start rebelling against the idea of chores.
Yes.
As they learn more independence, one of the things they do is fight about that. So if you're fighting with your 9-year-old about whether or not they're doing and whether or not it's slave labor or anything like that, it's perfectly normal because they're trying to decide what they have control over.
Right, and which totally makes sense if you think about it. And as much as you want them to do what you've asked them to do, you do want them to have a mind of their own. So that's where, to me at least, that's where you sit them down and have the conversation. This is why this is not an option.
Right.
You have options in this area, but not in this area.
And when your child is starting to have that rebellion, I think it's really, really important to realize a few things. I was looking at this earlier. So they're right about 9 or 10. They're starting to become independent. They're starting to complain about the chores.
Right. Totally normal.
Or other things, rules, whatever it is.
The fact that you breathe in their space.
They got to be in before dark or whatever. Right. Because there's always the neighbor kid that doesn't have to do that.
Right.
The neighbor kid may be 4 years older than they are, but they don't understand that. That's not the connection they're making. So a lot of times, a lot of parents will, not all parents, but a lot of parents will get tired of the battle and they will start to give it.
Yep.
And they'll let them get away with more, stay out a little bit longer or whatever, rather than do it. But here's the thing. Between 9 and 10, they are only 6 years away from a driver's license.
Wow.
And being in a car by themselves.
Yeah.
Most likely by the age of 14, and I think that's actually a minimum age. It's probably younger than that. They will have access to drugs, cigarettes, alcohol, and vaping.
And that's different than, I mean, if it was around, I was oblivious.
No, my 12-year-old year playing Little League, we had a kid on our team who was a stonehead.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, like I said, maybe that was going on. And I was
so I'm being generous at 14. It's really, in today's day and age, especially in cities, suburbs, it's 11
which
or
is true.
12.
And I was raised very rural.
So you're talking about fighting with a 9 or 10-year-old about being able to make adult type decisions and not wanting them to grow up too far. But at 11, they may have to make a very adult decision.
And so are they equipped to do that?
Are they equipped to do that? And that
really
starts with responsibilities and consequences for not following through and being able to say, if I say this, what's going to happen? If I do this, what's going to happen? If I don't do this, what's going to happen?
Which goes back to what I said. Either make a rule and stick to it or don't make the rule.
Yeah.
Because you being wishy-washy doesn't help the situation.
No. And then take it this way. So there's a song that really hits a country song about, he's 15, he wants to be 16. 16, he wishes he was 18. It's a catchy little tune, and I like it. It ends when he's 25. This kid has no idea what the future holds. But bottom line is, I didn't even realize this when I was 16. You get your driver's license when you're age 16. You can vote when you're 18 and enlist in the military.
It's insane.
So, and now in most states, it's 16 and a half. So you have literally a year and a half between you could drive on your own and go and be shot.
Well, and one of the things that we talked about, oh gosh, from the time the kids were little, is our goal is to raise them to be adults.
Right.
It wasn't to protect them from everything. It wasn't to put them in the situation to deal with everything by themselves.
Right.
But we really did want to equip them, and definitely, I mean, gosh, I wish we were doing this because we did everything right, and that is so not the case. But I do.
I did. You messed them up totally.
I messed them up totally. That is the truth. And so I think that perspective of, am I equipping them to be a good adult?
Right.
Is really the question to ask yourself.
Are they equipped for the challenges of the next year?
Because, one of the things that I realized as you're saying that is I got my license and I was 16 years old, and I was working at now they were my dad's gas stations, but I was working, and I have always said I was the boss's kid, so I cleaned all the bathrooms.
Right.
Because I was not going to be the boss's kid that didn't. But I think that came from I wasn't catered to at home growing up. I was expected to do things, and I sure wasn't going to be the boss's kid that stood there and said, oh, well, you'll need to go do that.
I remember when our oldest daughter was 14 and a half or 15 years old, and we thought we had done all of this correctly. Instead, she had worked, and everything. And I realized that she was very close to getting her driver's license and very close to being away from us. And she had never gone into a grocery store or a CVS and purchased something on her own.
Right.
Like gotten out of a car, gone in,
because you don't,
got it off the shelf.
You just don't even have that thought.
No. And they were small kids. And so now we did, when we lived in a little town, we sit the two of them together on a bicycle, but like never, and even with vague instructions, I intentionally remember going, okay, I'm going to give her vague instructions. And she started to open the door and she said, aren't you coming in? And I said, no. And she looked at me like in shock. Now, I had her working for me in Dallas, Texas in a hotel, but always in eyesight.
Yes.
And always in controlled circumstances. This was literally putting her in an uncontrolled circumstance. She shouldn't have been probably 14 before she had that experience. That was when I just kind of got caught up in that protective part. And we thought we were doing it right.
Well, but even within that, I don't even think that they can pump gas. They're not supposed to legally pump gas.
Yeah, that's the most ridiculous thing. Only licensed drivers are allowed to pump gas. In Indiana, that's what the signs say.
Yeah.
How do you learn?
So you're not going to pump gas until you can drive.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Yeah.
That doesn't even make any sense.
Now, there's a whole story I could embarrass your oldest daughter on about pumping gas, but I'm not going to share it here.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But hey, kid, remind me, if I haven't told your husband about this story, I need to, so just shoot it that way.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of questions to ask yourself. I don't think it's just like in anything in parenting, marriage, relationships, there is no one size fits all.
Right.
Hands down, especially if there's divorced families, if there's younger and older kids in the same home, if there's only children, I'm sure all of that plays into all of those conversations. But bottom line, are you preparing them to be a healthy adult member of society based on their age?
Based on their age, based on their emotional ability, based on their maturity, their intellectual ability. Because I mean, there are
all of that.
There are people with special needs, but they can be prepared
as much as they can be.
As much as they can be, and so yes, all of this is a sliding scale. But don't be afraid to prepare your kids. I think that's the message that we would love to give people is don't be afraid to prepare your children.
And be an understanding that if you're going to ask them to do something, you need to make sure that it's important and you're willing to back it up or don't make the rule.
And bottom line is your job as a parent is to make them an adult.
Yeah, they're going to be one.
They're going to be one whether you do it or not.
Responsible or irresponsible.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter if they're an honor student. If you aren't preparing them for adulthood, it won't carry over.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that was kind of fun.
Yeah, it was a little bit lighter than our last two.
A little bit lighter. Yeah. So be part of the conversation on Facebook. Join any of our episodes. There's always posts on Facebook. You can comment. We'll reply to you. We'll mention some things. Send us some topic ideas if you want.
Oh, we'd love to hear that. And let us know if there's maybe a tough subject out there that you would be interested in us talking about. We're in the place where we are conquering.
We have microphones.
And we're willing.
And we'll find somebody who's actually an expert who can actually talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Have a great week, everybody.